Hi, this is RN Bhaskar from BKBB, which is an acronym for Bhaskar Ki Business Baatein. You've been familiar with this channel for the last 8 months because we brought you every week a policy analysis, an occasional story, and a conversation. And just about a couple of weeks ago, 1.5 weeks to be precise, we started this channel, which is a daily news. Not exactly news, but news behind the news. We pick up two or three headlines, sometimes more, which we think are very, very important for our readers to know, and the or nuances of that news item. And today, as always, I have my co-anchors with me. I have Katya, who's there, and I have Isha. Together with me, we'll talk about these three headlines, and the headlines we're going to talk to you today about are on the screen. The first is about Singapore lists Bitcoin derivatives. The second is Starlink partners with Bharti Airtel. And the third is Trump trounces Canada tariffs. Uh, when we do these news, it's interesting to note that many of these news items could have major repercussions across the world, not just India. And for that, let's go to the first story. Can we have Katya there talking about Bitcoin?
Thank you, sir. As usual, see, today the interesting point is all our headlines are related to Trump and his impact on the world stage. So, the news today is SGX, Singapore's top exchange, is planning to list Bitcoin perpetual futures. They want to bring it as soon as the second half of 2025. And this move is to expand the institutional access, market access to Bitcoin, cryptocurrency in general, which is extremely interesting because 2 years back when I was talking to the VP of a top brokerage firm, he said there is absolutely no interest from institutions on bitcoins or cryptocurrency. It's only something young kids play around with. But I think that has changed. And again, as we said, it's also because of Trump. Has a very good pro Bitcoin agenda. It's going to boost demand, and once it becomes official, like an exchange listing it, it'll bring in more money. Bitcoin and cryptocurrency in general will have a lot more liquidity, and it's one step closer to breaking it mainstream. But there have been other exchanges who've done it, international exchanges. Japan's Osaka Dojima, I hope I'm pronouncing it right, has also looking to list Bitcoin futures, and this is going to be a game changer, according to me. So, what is your opinion, sir? Bitcoin going mainstream, good thing, bad thing, especially in uncertain times like this? Do we need more alternative futures because stocks are crashing, and a lot of gold has been over purchased according to a lot of people? So, what is your opinion?
Okay. What happens is Bitcoin is a very interesting story. And contrary to everyone's, all the skeptics, Bitcoin has kept on climbing and become more popular, especially among the younger generations. Many people have now begun to believe that Bitcoin might be an asset class that is worth keeping. And that is why maybe that could be one of the primary reasons why Singapore also decided to list the Bitcoin derivatives. But I am still a little skeptical for one reason. The volatility that happens in Bitcoins is far excessive. Some defaults are already taking place. There's a third problem, and that is I don't think it's going to go away immediately. Across the world, almost every politician looks at Bitcoin to transfer money because Bitcoin is the only method of transfer which escapes the snooping eyes of the USA. Which is why, even in India, 2 years ago, the Reserve Bank of India recommended banning Bitcoin, banning cryptocurrencies. The government of India said, no, we are still studying the situation. And there's one last aspect. If you look at Bloomberg's report today, you'll find that there's $1 trillion underworld market for Bitcoin in Dubai. So it's very interesting. I think it's early days, But this listing of Bitcoin on Singapore is a major step which could possibly influence the way it works. Okay, that takes me to the second story. Could I have Isha to come in with the second story?
Hello, good morning. Hope you're having a great start to the day. Thank you for tuning in. Today, I'm going to be bringing you a headline from The Hindu titled Bharti to bring in Starlink satellite net services to India. So, in keeping with today's theme, again, we all know that Starlink has been trying to enter the Indian market for quite a while now. But as Trump has come back into power, uh, uh, Bharti Airtel has announced the signing of a distribution agreement allowing it to sell Elon Musk's satellite internet firm Starlink services. This deal, however, is contingent upon receiving authorizations from the Department of Telecommunications and the Ministry of Home Affairs before Airtel and Starlink can begin their operations in India. So, according to the current plans, Bharti Airtel's retail stores will start selling Starlink equipment and start providing Starlink services to business customers. Since Starlink is a satellite based service, it does not require physical infrastructure such as telecom towers, giving it the ability to increase accessibility and take to the internet considerably, as it would be able to serve even in the most rural parts of India. And this in turn would take us a step closer to digital inclusion in our country. This would not only allow for every individual, business, and community to have reliable internet, but it also holds immense potential for development in the fields of education, healthcare, and artificial intelligence. However, we must also think about what it means to invite a US based player into our Indian telecommunications market. In and what this the implications will have in terms of data privacy and surveillance. So currently, all our social media, be it YouTube, Google, X, or Meta, are all owned by the US. So they already have a lot of our data. But satellite-based internet services invite a new threat. The satellites are orbiting, so this means that they are only governed by Indian telecommunication laws while they are in the Indian airspace, which means that technically they could pass on information to other satellites while orbiting once they leave the Indian airspace. So this gives a loophole that means that we would need new telecom laws in order to be able to properly regulate telecommunications and then also maintain data privacy of our citizens. Another thing that I think should be considered in regard to this move is the implications that will have on Reliance Communications, the other major player in the Indian telecom market. So this is really, really big news. There's some pros, there's some cons, a lot to think about. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, sir. Thank you.
Okay. You see, very interestingly, and this chart will explain to you, for the last 2 years, last 3 years actually, there are 4 contenders for the low orbit satellite market. And those 4 players are players like Starlink, OneWeb, there was Telerate's services as well, and there was a 4th one, which is Amazon services. All these 4 services were contending for the web space, for the low orbit satellite space. Somewhere down the line, Telerate fell off, and you can see the pictures there. You had Telerate, you had Amazon, you had OneWeb, and you had Starlink. Many people don't know that OneWeb belonged to Airtel. Or let's say Airtel invested in a UK company and became the major shareholder. But Airtel could not match the financial muscle of Elon Musk and Starlink. And so you're just about maybe 20 or 30 satellites in the sky, while Starlink had several hundred satellites in the sky. When Starlink made an application to India, the telecom lobby in India was against it. Then after Trump came to power, Starlink was supposed to have come to India and the government was willing to give permission, but there was a danger that Indians would say it was a sellout to a foreigner. Now this tie-up with Airtel makes this an Indian joint venture, and some of that opposition may get pushed away. Will this work? I don't know. A lot of telecom rules will have to be changed. It's a new technology, it's a new administrative affair, and it's it could also lead to other kinds of complications because this is a US based technology. We don't know what plans China has, what plans Russia has, what plans the rest of the world may have because of the alignments with BRICS. Let us see what happens, but this is interesting. And that takes me to my own story, which I'm going to talk about, and that is the huge spat that has taken place between Canada and the USA. Canada's premier, both the premier of Ottawa and the new to be and yet to be announced premier of Canada itself, have made their intention very clear that they will not let Trump dictate terms. In retaliation against Trump's tariffs of 25% on aluminium, steel, and automobiles, Trump announced yesterday that it would charge a 25% duty on electricity sales to USA. Now, what people don't know is that Canada's electricity costs a little less than USA electricity. And one of the reasons why Canada is the cheapest cost aluminium producer is because its electricity costs are lower, which is why Canadian aluminium appeals to US manufacturers because the costs go down. Now, with the tariffs going up, because Canada has imposed a 25% tariff on electricity sales, the advantage that USA might have on making aluminium will be destroyed forever. Canada also made one more statement very clearly. If this kind of a trade war continues, Canada will stop supplying electricity altogether to the USA. And the premier stated on national television, addressing North Americans, he says, we love Americans, we like to do business with America, but we do not like this one man that you elected which wants to change business dynamics between our two countries. Trump wanted to impose a 50% tariff, but he withdrew immediately because of Wall Street collapsed. Almost $3 trillion of trade disappeared in valuations. And Trump rescinded the additional tariff, but Canada said, we don't care whether the additional tariffs are rescinded or not. Till the tariffs remain from USA, we will keep these tariffs on in Canada. Trump has finally met its match. He's begun to realize that other countries will not accept any tariff that the US wishes to charge and levy on other countries. This is the first major spat. A second spat is on the cards. Germany said that they will announce counter tariffs. And in the same breath, other countries, Mexico wanted to put tariffs. Trump has deferred the levy of tariffs against Mexico. Very interesting times and very dangerous times because it destroys the very fabric of trade in the world. And that ends my story. Watch the Canada-USA space very closely. And of course, do click on the subscribe button. Do click on the like button. And do send in your comments because comments have started pouring in and I can see a few questions that have come in and I'm going to try and receive some of the questions. One of the first questions that's come up is whether the government is prepared for this new technology of satellite-based communication. No, the government is not prepared. All the government has done so far is reduced spectrum prices. It reduced spectrum prices, I think, under pressure on the US. But when you reduce spectrum prices, there's a big advantage that players like Vodafone will have because Vodafone was weighed under by the high spectrum charges. Of course, low tariffs will benefit both Starlink and Airtel. It'll benefit Reliance. BSNL does not matter because of one pocket of the government to another pocket of the government. But yes, if the government is not prepared, they'll have to sit together and see how to draft regulations. And the regulations may have to include a situation where, let's say, China or Russia decide to have their own low orbit technology and facility. What will India do? Because a satellite footprint covers the entire world. So we don't know. Yes, there's a second question. Will the listing of Singapore reduce the volatility of crypto? No, I don't think so. Crypto is inherently a very volatile instrument. And you have to make sure that this instrument does not reach aberrational heights or lows because it could affect lots of people. But since it's a favorite instrument of almost all politicians around the world, there might be some consensus in how to stabilize prices. Let's see. And yes, there's a third question. Will the US-Canada spat help India? I don't know. But as the spat gets bigger, Trump may be forced to step back and withdraw his tariff campaign altogether. He's losing goodwill in the markets. He's losing goodwill among the traders. He's losing goodwill among American companies, which are finding manufacturing very, very chaotic in America because of this changing prices everywhere. And when trade barriers are raised by every country, America will end up as a loser. In that case, India will benefit because currently India seems to be reluctant to challenge America for some reason or the other. And that brings me to the end of today's news behind the news. And yes, again, please do click the subscribe button. Do click the like button. And please tune in tomorrow because we'll have another episode of Headlines and the News Behind the News. Thank you for watching and thank you for being with us. Take care. Have a wonderful day.